Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a special Christmas Eve tour. We have a mission of the month tonight, and I'm really excited to be covering Apollo 8. One of my favorite Apollo missions. It's way up there with Apollo 15, but as I've been learning just a bit about Apollo 8, it's just really incredible, just all the milestones and um, just a really monumental mission. So excited to be celebrating that. For those of you who don't know, the 52nd anniversary. Make sure I'm counting right. I feel like I'm missing a number in there. Um, but from 1968, so the original, one of the main recordings, broadcasts that they did from the moon, we'll get to that in a bit, was actually Christmas Eve, 1968. So here we are, Christmas Eve 2020. We made it to Christmas Eve in 2020. Unbelievable, but here we are. So that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. As usual, we'll start off with Stellarium. So right now you see open space in the background, but we'll pop over to Stellarium and we're going to be really using the open space tonight. They have a special profile that's just for Apollo 8, so I'm excited to get to tinker with a bit of that. So I'm Irene Pease, your friendly neighborhood astronomer. Thanks for joining me. Let's get on into some Stellarium. So Stellarium, free software you can download for computers. You can also get the apps if you're interested in learning more about that. There's a class for that. Check that out at aaa.org. But this is looking at the night sky. I use this a lot for kind of planning trips, planning observing, planning what I want to look at. And tonight, I was going to go kind of easy on what's up in the sky because I just did a whole winter skies thing last week. And next week, we're going to be looking at the skies for the next year with Ted Williams. So I'm excited to do that. Not on New Year's Eve, but we'll do it on Wednesday next week. But I guess I just wanted to focus on the moon tonight and this week just because, kind of relaxing. We have some holidays and we're going to be talking about Apollo anyway. So, kind of checking out the moon tonight and last night, pretty close to Mars. So, you can see last night it was really close to Mars. The night before, maybe people were still looking at the conjunction. I think I saw that late Tuesday as the skies were clearing. I just don't even get me started about the clouds this last week. But the moon is going through lovely phases this week. It's about half-ish, just over halfway illuminated. We see almost 60% illumination, some of the info that Stellarium gives us. But I just want to zoom in and see the moon in all its glory and kind of check out, again, the fun part to look at the moon when you're observing from the Earth is really along the day-night line, the terminator. That was also really key for later Apollo missions that landed on the moon. They had to land relatively close to the terminator. So they had to time the missions with the phases to match the landing site so that they had a terminator, so they got the contrast. And I might do a whole nother show about that at some point because I will do Apollo 15 at some point. But just with the phases of the moon through this week, so again, this was 2 nights ago. If we kind of lock in here, I think I can follow through. Tonight we have more full, we have more of the Mare showing. And then over the next few days, more and more and more towards full moon. So if you can, when you look up at the moon, even just with your eyes, see if you can pick out some of those dark areas, the dark seas or Mare. The other fun thing with the moon this week, it'll be doing this every month, and some months it'll be closer than others, but it'll be making a swing past the Hyades and Pleiades. So you have the Hyades, this kind of V-shaped cluster in Taurus, the bull, and the Pleiades looks like a mini dipper, kind of riding on the back of the bull. So this month, not getting super close to the Pleiades, but just kind of, I guess, Boxing Day, Saturday night, the moon will kind of be passing between the Pleiades and Hyades, two really beautiful open clusters that we like to talk about a lot. So that's kind of the challenge, or not so challenge, but a task for the week if you want an observing checklist. Look at the moon, see if you can see any of those dark Maria, see any of that detail, even just with the naked eye, see what you can make out there. and then also see if you can catch it passing between the Pleiades and Hyades Saturday night if you have some clear skies. It's always the issue with clear skies again. So again, for this week, I wanted to go ahead and talk about mission of the month. So every month I'm trying to cover a mission because I want to learn more about some of these historic missions and what's going on with current missions. And there will be a class all about that. Check it out. Eventually, it'll be at aaa.org. And but I for this month, I just wanted to pick Apollo 8 because it's so amazing. And the more I read about it, the more amazed I was. So I wanted to go back in time, even just looking at Stellarium, and see what the moon was like back at the time of Apollo 8. So that was way back in 1968. 1968, and launch was on the 21st, and they landed the 27th. So early in the morning on the 21st, about 7 a.m. East Coast time, I believe. But just we can just kind of see what was it like back then. So different phase than we have this week, slightly different, not too different. We actually had moon zipping by Venus. So this was, sorry, let me go back to the 21st. So 21st, we have kind of more of a crescent moon. It's still relatively new, relatively close to the sun in the sky. So just barely a crescent, but it took them a couple days to get there, right? So you can't just jump to the moon lickety split. It takes a few days to get there. So it took them until the morning of the 24th. So basically 2 or 3 days, about 3 days to get to the moon. So by then, it was a slightly fuller crescent, about 30%. And then they stayed there for a day-ish, and then took another 2 days to come back. So this is kind of the phase of the moon, and I want you to kind of keep that in mind, this shape. So not quite half, so we're between a crescent and a half first quarter moon is kind of the phase that the moon was in as the Apollo 8 astronauts were orbiting around it. Okay, so moon, back then, the moon hasn't changed a whole lot, but we can see what that would have looked like now over in open space. Yeah. So the moon was actually just a little bit past its closest point. So here we are in open space. With open space, we can see, well, all kinds of things, really. But I wanted to, I don't know if I have time to, I probably want to do too many things, to just quick point out the kind of shape of the moon's orbit. So if we turn on the moon's trail around the Earth, it's way out there, right? It's not a perfect circle. So sometimes it's a little bit closer, sometimes it's a little bit farther from the Earth. And the Apollo 8 mission was just after one of the closest points of the moon to us. So the close point, that's perigee, the far point, that's apogee, and is actually the closest perigee. So not all perigees are, equal. So there's a perigee every month or so, and an apogee where it's at the farthest point every month or so as the moon is going around the Earth. But the perigee that month was actually the closest that it was for all of 1968, 1969. So that was a really, really close point. So they were going to be as far away as people had ever been from the Earth, but it was still closer than the following missions. Most of the missions that would follow were even further away. So just coming in here, this is actually centered on the Apollo 8 launch capsule. So launching, so you can see, it's like the butt crack of dawn, as some of my friends would call it, in Florida. So if I actually maybe start time, whoops, that was way too fast. Let's try that again. So we actually are over here in just above Florida, so launching off of the Cape down there. And let me reset real time. That's much better. To actually see our launch vehicle. So this was the first time that we had this Saturn V rocket launching with people at the top of it, just like these huge explosives, basically. Um, Here we come, launching away. Let me slow this down a smidge. So the first time we put people at the top of a Saturn V rocket, and it was going to be the first time that we would have people orbiting more than one world. So we'd had people orbit the Earth before, we'd had other satellites and things orbiting the moon, so other things that had orbited the Earth and the moon, but this was the first time we were sending people out there. So pretty big deal, just a little bit. And so it was launched up into kind of what we call a parking orbit. So it did kind of 1.5 laps around the Earth. So a nice view that they got of some stars. Maybe it wasn't so nice for the first few minutes. The acceleration, I've heard, is quite a kicker. Never been, I've only heard. But we get a couple laps around the Earth, moving relatively quickly. I think I might be moving a little too fast here. See if I can get away from the Earth a bit as we are orbiting. So basically, to get away from the Earth, you launch yourself up into Earth orbit. So you don't just launch straight away from the Earth, but launching up into Earth orbit, and then from Earth orbit, getting an extra boost. So we'll go ahead and speed up time, watch them go around the Earth, because you don't have to run as fast to escape the Earth if you're already kind of far away from it. So that's an advantage of launching away from the Earth once you're already a little ways up there. So escape speed from the Earth is about 11.2 kilometers per second. But since they're already going really, really fast, going around the Earth, let me just kind of center on Earth for a moment, they only had to escape then at a slightly slower speed, just shy of escape speed for Earth, about 10.8 kilometers per second. So what I wanted to do tonight is just kind of follow through their paths, and we'll kind of talk about some bits of it as we go, and I speed this up. So we had this was also the first time that anyone was going to go on the far side of the moon. So we have the near side of the moon that faces Earth, and then we have the far side of the moon that faces away from Earth. And it wobbles a little bit, so we don't always have like the exact same side of the moon facing us, because again, it goes around the Earth in an ellipse. So sometimes a little closer, sometimes a little further. There's Apollo 8, first loop. Should be jet setting away in a moment. Here, let's see if we can turn around to actually see the moon somewhere out there. Wrong way. So, so people talk about like a dark side of the moon, but so half the moon is always going to be dark, just not always the same half. So I want to slow time down just a little bit and kind of zoom out and see. I think I have the orbit of the moon still on. Kind of see how we're aiming at it. Play a bit. So we have the mission jetting away from the Earth and then out towards, I'm all turned around in space, jetting out towards the moon. So I try to look down from Earth's North Pole. I'm used to seeing things in that kind of orientation. So we can see it's not really aimed exactly at the moon, because the moon is going to come around this way. So you have to, that's one of the tricky parts of orbital mechanics. A lot of math. I'm just going to leave it at that. I've never tried to calculate these, but try to hit this moving target. It's a giant target, but it's not that huge, because compared to space is really big. space is really hard. You're already like sitting on top of like these massive explosives, um, and then trying to hit this moving target, um, as we get out to um, as we get all the way out to the orbit of the moon. So the launch, the orbit around the Earth, pretty exciting parts. And then there's, like I said, a couple days waiting to actually get um, the moon. And I think I need to turn on a slightly different. There's a whole bunch of orbits in here. Trail, trail, not that trail. Nope, different trail. Oh, yeah. Um, so we'll see. It should be getting there eventually, but in the meantime, see if we can zoom in and see this thing. So it wasn't just like shoot at the moon. There was a few other things that they had to do. One thing that was happening was the infamous barbecue roll. We're out in space, right? So there's not an atmosphere, you don't have an ocean of air, let alone an ocean of water to kind of regulate temperatures. So you're kind of like rotating around so that you're not always facing the same, you don't always have the same side of your space capsule facing the sun, because that would get really, really hot. So, like on the day side, you're talking about 200 degrees Celsius. On the night side or in the shadow, you're looking at about 100, sorry, minus 100 degrees Celsius. So it's 300 degrees Celsius, um, more in Fahrenheit between the sunlight and shadow. So you don't want to have thermal expansion issues. So you do like this nice slow barbecue roll, which because of center of mass ends up being a little bit more complicated than just simple rotation. But you can see on the module, they have this beautiful model of the module in open space. They have like the little thrusters. Um, you have the kind of the main part. This is the part at the top that actually makes it all the way back to Earth and lands in the ocean, splash. So you know how that ended. It was a happy ending. We made it back, right? But you have thrusters for control on the different sides. You still have this rocket down here, so you can do another burn when you get to the moon, and then when you want to leave the moon. You have some communications and things, and way up top you got a couple windows. So windows are important. It's nice to be able to look out, and actually they still use stars for navigation. They ran into a little bit of trouble at some point. They weren't able to get some of the stars they were looking for, but yeah, even when we're going into space, yeah, still celestial navigation is like a thing, which is kind of mind-boggling. Um, so let's go ahead and I'm going to zoom out some more, pull away, and we'll maybe fast forward to the moon. Because again, that was a couple of days. So what do you do in your space capsule while you're waiting to get to the moon? Try to sleep, except that they had burns so that they couldn't really sleep for a while. But I'm just going to move through a little bit more time here. So we sent 3 people out there. And I think, let me just double check my trails again. They actually got pushed up a little bit. That wasn't the original crew that was slated. Make sure I have my right trail on. There we go. So the original crew, or sorry, the one of the people actually got bumped. I think Jim Lowell moved in, took Michael Collins' spot. So we had Jim Lowell and Fred Hayes and spacing Bill Anders, piloting the lunar module there. So doing a burn again to get to the moon, to get captured by the moon. So this was what some of them described as like the longest 4 minutes of their life, when they had to adjust their speed so that they didn't want to crash into the moon, and they didn't want to like miss it and like go off and, they say shoot for the moon, and if you miss you land among the stars. Yeah, no, that wasn't that was like literally like, life and death here. Not as glamorous and, poetic as it sounds. a little bit more terrifying than that when you're actually like trying to not miss the moon so that you don't just drift off into space. Um, Not as cool as it sounds, probably. So they did do another burn to get into lunar orbit up here, and then they got to do several lunar orbits. So I wanted to say at this point we're still kind of facing the Earth side of the moon. So this trail of the moon here, kind of like a marker for me, is kind of helping. Um, kind of helps mark like where the Earth is as far as being behind us. So we can go ahead and maybe zoom a little bit closer into our module here. So they did do a couple laps around the moon. So once they're in there, oh nice. So now we have our, I'm gonna adjust the trails again. Want my moon trail. Yeah, just that one. So you can see a little bit of a bump there. So they did 10 orbits total, spent about 20 hours there. So it's about 2 hours per orbit. And I think it was after the second orbit when they were back on the Earth facing side, they did a little bit of a live stream, a much cooler live stream than anything I can run from here. But just kind of sharing like the inside of the capsule, which we'll see it a little bit. It wasn't until the fourth loop around that they saw the Earthrise. Just because of the orientation of the module, the windows weren't always like facing in the direction where they would have been able to see the Earthrise. But we'll just go ahead and kind of zip through that. For those of you, again, who aren't aware, usually you can't see Earthrise on the moon unless you're moving around it. If you're at the edge, like right there, kind of like on the edge where it kind of wobbles a little bit. Remember that kind of wobbling because of the elliptical orbit of the moon around the Earth. It actually does rise and set, and I might actually kind of tune into that in just a moment. Um, but these were the first people to actually go around the backside, see the far side of the moon, be completely disconnected from the Earth. Just the three of them, like no communication because the Earth is in the way. That was like one of the big things that the Chinese had to overcome, like more recently when they, actually landed something on the far side of the moon. We haven't done that before. That's only a recent thing that we've been able to land something on the far side of the moon because you have to have something in orbit to be able to send communications back to the Earth because the moon's in the way. So as we come up on getting onto our fourth orbit, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of zoom in here, and we can see there's another awesome toggle setting. What this would have looked like. So we're, a few days after we left the Earth. So remember that phase. I'm going to talk about the phase. Try not to geek out too much. But here we have basically the time and location of Earthrise. So you had the lunar module here kind of coming in at an orientation where the windows would actually be able to get a view of the Earth when it comes in. So this is moving in real time. Like I said, they were orbiting once around the moon every 2 hours. So that doesn't sound like super fast, but it's, the moon isn't that small. So they're kind of zipping along there to get that. And they wouldn't have seen it possibly right at the Earthrise. So we can move through here a little bit. But you can see they're still doing the barbecue roll, right? And you can start to see an Earth appearing to rise as they come around the moon. So I'm just going to pause time and see if we can fly into the module. I practiced this all afternoon. Just kidding, not all afternoon, just after classes got out. Um, to actually try to fly into this thing. Not fly into it, like crash into it, but well, we'll see. We'll see if this works or not. Um, so we have, let's see, a little bit, a little bit. Eh. See if we can, I feel like Santa Claus, right? Like trying to come in through the window. There's no chimney. It's just a window. And might need a little help from my open space magic buttons. Yeah. There we go. Perfectly aligned. See, I totally could have been a pilot. Just kidding. Never, never a pilot. All right. So there's my magic open space button. So here we have, again, I think, am I still checking my time? Yeah, so if we actually look out, so this is from inside the module. This is part of the open space model, which is just like amazing. It's so fun. Um, and all I have to do is not break it. Good luck with that. So I'm going to turn time back on, and you can see like just how quickly the landscape kind of changes there. But if they were looking out the window, as apparently someone was, you would eventually see the Earth coming into view. So I don't know which window who was looking out. I don't actually have that much information, but you say, oh my goodness, what on earth? Oh, I mean, there's the Earth. And you have this glorious view of the Earth rising there. So obviously not quite the same as like actually being there, but as far as trying to simulate what it might have been like, I can only imagine like the excitement. So they happen to have color film. I mean, you're going to the moon, right? So you're gonna like take photographs of basically shades of gray, I guess. But they did have color film, and so they were able to get. Do I have it? Uh-oh. Other button. And not that. There we go. Sorry. There we go. So there's the image, the sunrise image. So that was it wound up being one of the most iconic images of the last century, taken from Apollo 8 through just looking out the window. I think it kind of set a high standard for, like what people see even today, like looking out, looking out the ISS and taking pictures. But this was just kind of breathtaking. Just a lot of science as well as a lot of engineering and a lot of just humanity. So almost like a pale blue dot image, but this was taken by actual human beings farther away than any human beings had ever been. And just the kind of sentiment that the astronauts had then and still have now, even when they go up to the ISS, is like just kind of saying, it's like we went to space to learn about, the moon and learn about the solar system. But when we look back, we started really learning more about the Earth and appreciating it more for what it is. So that's your Earthrise image. I think I might just do the extended Earthrise another time. As far as like showing I actually don't know how to get out of here. As far as actually showing the moon rising over the Earth in different situations. But we can do that. So we'll save that for another time. there's some other parts of the mission that I wanted to get to. If I can remember where I am here. So I think I want my lunar orbits on again. There's my lunar orbits on again. Um, so they also got 2 years ago for the 50th anniversary. I found they had one of these craters named after them. So there's the Anders. Sorry, the Moonrise or the Earthrise crater is just right up in here, and so as they flew over it, that's the crater that they were flying over as they were seeing the Earthrise. Yeah, thanks, Tom. We got it. They went to the moon only to discover Earth, so it's kind of amazing. Too fast, but yeah. So it's been over 50 years, but let's see if I can move away a bit from here. But they did multiple broadcasts. So they did the first broadcast where they did like a tour around the lunar module. That was again on like their second pass, and then around their ninth pass. So they'd been out there a while. They did another stream, another broadcast. This time, it was, I guess, later in the evening, Christmas Eve, and target on moon. And since it's Christmas Eve now, I just wanted to share part of that as I look around for the Earth. So
we are now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
So a lot of really amazing, just amazing firsts, amazing achievements for the Apollo 8 mission. I'm going to kind of fast forward to the trip back home, so to speak, so I can bring us home. There was a lot more I wanted to cover. I was afraid I would have too much time, and obviously that's always a mistake. I just want to mention the Apollo 8 crew when they returned at the end of, again, it was just the end of the year, but Time magazine did name them the men of the year. for 1968. And the image that we saw earlier, the Earthrise image, became known as like one of the top 100 most iconic photos of the last century, just kind of showing a very different perspective, very different view for humanity. And also, I was really impressed. They set literally and figuratively a high bar for television. Their broadcast won an Emmy, which I think is just really tremendous. So again, it's an inspiration for generations. So even my generation, I guess, I grew up kind of with Hubble and the space station, and seeing people living in space there and being able to broadcast, um, kind of all has its roots in a way back in Apollo 8. So a really incredible and really historic mission for a lot of reasons. So I might have to do a follow up doing some more highlights from Apollo 8, because I just haven't had enough time to cover everything I wanted to. I just want to say open space is like really amazing. I was really excited to get to use the Apollo 8 scene, profile scene, and just use like some of the amazing models, the timings, and all of the trails and everything that they have loaded in there. Really great, really fun for exploring 8 and other missions. So thanks again, everyone, so much for joining me for this special Christmas Eve anniversary celebration of the Apollo 8 mission. And thanks to Stellarium and Open Space. You can find those, download those at their respective websites. I'm Irene Pease, your friendly neighborhood astronomer, wishing you clear skies and a Merry Christmas.